that's one of the things I often tell young coaches is you got to get used to the idea that there's probably only one or maybe two players on your team that are actually really happy about the role they're playing. Like almost everyone else is going to want a bigger role in some way. And so being able to genuinely celebrate the contributions of all 12 members of your team, right? Like that everyone could, something we talk about at PGC, but that everyone has a chance to star in their role.
Welcome to the Jamodi Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it.
Today we are joined by the Director of Basketball Development for PGC Basketball, Craig Nickel. In Canada, Coach Nickel was a boys and girls high school head coach for over 20 years. He led his teams to numerous city and regional championships, including 14 years in a row of qualifying for the provincial championships, which is the same as our state tournaments. He coached select ball for 15 years and was a two-time Coach of the Year in the Junior Elite League, Canada's top select circuit for girls. Coach Nickel is also the head coach of University of Waterloo's women's teams from 2016 to 2019. He's been directing with PGC since 2014, and in 2020 became the Director of Basketball Development. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at Jamodi Podcast.
Coach, man, I've been looking forward to this from the time I met you down at our college pro session at Texas Women's University. So this is going to be a highlight.
That's awesome, man. I'm so glad to hear that. I've been looking forward to it too. And here's the reason why. I feel like I know all the PGC guys really well. And then maybe except for you. So, this kind of completes if you look at the guest list, I feel like I've had everybody from PGC on. You're the missing piece, man.
I love it. Well, yeah, and I've been involved with PGC since 2012 as a director, but it's only in the last couple of years that I've stepped into a much more significant role. So, I've heard your name as sort of in sort of the lore of PGC greats and
the lore.
No, totally. Like the people that have worked with you, like they're all saying you got to get Matt back directly with us, and so no, I'm looking forward to
this. I appreciate them saying that. I loved directing those point guard college sessions. Anybody that's done it understands just how much work that 6 days is. I mean, you're on. Really, you get 4 or 5 maybe hours of sleep. But you're on, if you're lucky, if the athletes aren't running around but you're on the rest of the time. But the teaching, the life change that you're able to see in those, I mean, I just don't know if there's anything out there like it.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is. I always say to my wife, it's this weird, like at the end of a week, you are just exhausted, but you also, your soul is full.
Yeah.
Like you feel like so you're tired, but there's an energy that comes with it as well. So.
Well said. Well said. What sessions do you direct, or did you direct?
I primarily do the Playmaker College sessions, which is our 7th to 11th grade. But I also, in my role, get around to see our point guard college sessions, our scoring college sessions, and now we've branched off into some day camps as well. So
smart.
Yeah. We've had, I had another busy summer. I was on the road for about 7 weeks in total.
Wow. What's your connection with PGC? How'd you meet up with them?
Yeah, so I was a pretty successful high school coach up here, and one of the things I live up in Canada, about an hour west of Toronto, and one of the things that's really different up here compared to the rest of North America is we do girls high school basketball in the fall and boys high school basketball in the winter, and so I never had to make a choice between which side of the game I was going to work on. I did girls in the fall, boys in the winter, and then got into AAU season. And So Mono had been asking me for a couple years to get involved as a director, and I was, had all the standard excuses of being too busy and all these other things. And then, but I came as an observing coach to a session up at University of Waterloo. And from the moment I saw it, like literally day one of seeing it, I was like, I want to do this. I want to be
Yeah.
part of this. So I kicked myself for not getting involved a little bit sooner, but already it's been 10 years since I directed my first session.
Wow.
And yeah, just love it.
I think that's the reaction that most coaches have
Yes.
when they observe a session. I had gone twice in high school with Dick, with Coach DiVenzio.
So cool.
And yeah, so it's really fun to get to talk, Mono, Tyler Costin, some of the guys that remember him and were around him. But I had been away from it for a long time, and then I'd connected with Mono, really with somebody through PGC, Oliver. It was when they started to really send out emails, and I got this email from PGC. I'm like, what? Like, it's still going? Like, that is incredible, because I had heard, Dick had passed away in 2001, and so then they're like, well, hey, we know that you're a grad and you're coaching, and we're having the snaps thing. Why don't you come? Yep. And so that's where I first time I got plugged back in, and it was kind of cool because some of the people up there knew, like, oh yeah, you were with Dick for a little while, like it was kind of like this already special little club.
Yeah.
And then, but no, I'm sitting at my first session as really an observing director. Little did I know that those two guys Tommy and Nick, that I was working with, were just going to throw me right in the fire and say, hey, what session do you want to do? And I'm like, I haven't been here since high school. But you're right. I sat there thinking, I've been coaching wrong for the last 6 years. And it's really has. If there's one thing that's changed me as a coach and the trajectory, I think, of my career, it's PGC.
Yeah.
And they're not a sponsor, of the podcast.
No, that's right. I know it's, but again, it absolutely, it completely changed my approach to certain things I was teaching, even some of the ways I was interacting with athletes.
Yeah.
And then I think it was really instrumental I had the opportunity to then coach at the university level up here in Canada, at actually University of Waterloo, where Mono is a grad from. I took over their women's basketball team for 3 years. So yeah, so it's been transformational in my life for sure.
How did you think the pro camp went? Because I thought that was such a cool thing for PGC and, Chad Sanji and those guys and Mono to branch out into the, kind of that higher level of player. What was your experience with it?
I was thrilled with it. Chad deserves so much credit for the incredible amount of work that he put into that curriculum, and just the networking with the pros, but also navigating his way through conversations with the colleges and making sure that it was, that we weren't violating any compliance kind of issues. And so, but in the moment, I was thrilled with it, and the feedback we've received from it since, from the athletes and the coaches that were there, has just reinforced what an impact it had. And I don't think Mono would mind me sharing that we're hoping to now do a second one, like do 2 next summer, one at
awesome.
the beginning of our summer and one at the end, because I think in many ways the college game, like those athletes and the pros, they needed that to get reconnected to just the joy of the game. And that's why we deliberately put nothing out on social media about it. Like we weren't trying to market it in any sense. We just wanted to get high level athletes working with high level coaches and give them some stuff to take back with them, but also just get them to reconnect with that, how much they can love the game.
Yeah, I've always been blown away with the intentionality of Mono and all the guys at PGC, and even that idea of not putting it out on social media, because I think you and I and anybody would agree one of the easiest ways to grow it is to get these high level players there and then pretty much catapult it off of their status, their name. But there is something special about, guys, this is really for you.
Right.
We're not using you in any way. And I think that's big time.
Yeah, I think so often the athletes that were at that session are used to being kind of used in a sense,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's why we asked them not to wear any of their like their jerseys or gear, like, so that we didn't want the pros to feel like they were better than the college players, or that the big D1 schools are better than the smaller D1 schools. It was just like, we're all on a level ground here. We're all learners, and we're wanting to get everyone better here.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Ballogy. What's your BSA score? The Ballogy Skills Assessment is the only verified skills metric endorsed by the NAIA, NJCAA, and a growing number of NCAA coaches to discover and develop the best talent for your team. This 4-minute, 40-shot test can be taken free today on the Ballogy mobile app. Elevate your game. All of your experience with PGC, and then most likely, if you've been able to be a part of it this long, you have a growth mindset, which means you're out there wanting to learn, wanting to listen to coaches and leaders. So who are some of those that you follow closely?
Yeah, obviously the PGC guys are a big influence in my life. Like, Mono has been a huge influence in my life, both personally and professionally. And but I also, like, I love interacting with some other PGC directors from a professional growth viewpoint. Chad Sanji. I know you've had Matt McLeod on the podcast.
I'm telling you, we've had almost everyone that's been through PGC.
Yeah,
there's some of the younger guys I need to get on, but yeah.
Two of the younger guys I'd really recommend you getting on, connecting with, are Rudy Bentley and Dustin Aubert.
Yep.
They're both outstanding guys. Another guy that has been very influential, and it's kind of only recently that I got into his stuff, but Doug Lemov. His, like, the Coach's Guide to Teaching was just like, whoa, for me. Like, I've read the book twice, and I think
I haven't read it, but I heard it's not a difficult read. Like, it's not interesting, but when you talk about getting in the mud, you're getting deep.
Yeah, you can't. At least my mind doesn't allow me to move through that book quickly. Like, you're right. It is. You have to really concentrate and stay with it. I love how he's got, like, portions in it that send you to a web page where he's got, like, video links from it. But yeah, that's been a very, like, it's really forced me to re-examine some of the ways I practice, because I think there's some really good stuff in there. And I love podcasts, like, obviously, your podcast here, but the Hardwood Hustle guys with
awesome.
TJ and Sam. There's one that I listen to called Game Theory, and it's by Sam Viceni, and it's college and NBA oriented, but he's a really, really smart guy. Obviously really understands the game. So I love listening to his podcast. And then when I have time, I get into the Bill Simmons and those guys.
What was that guy's name again?
His name is Sam Venini. So it's VENENIE. And his podcast is called Game Theory.
Yeah, I'm going to look that one up.
Yeah, it's really, like, it's in-depth basketball. You can tell he understands the game at a very high level.
It's what's really fun about getting to do this, and I'm sure you feel the same way. In maybe, I don't know if it's more in the basketball community. It may be the same in every sport, but definitely in the basketball coaching community, people are just very willing to share. Like, it's been easier to get in touch with people than I ever dreamt it would be. And so when I write somebody's name down, it's not like, well, I don't know if I'll be able to. I'll probably be able to contact that guy. Most likely he'll be open to sharing, because that is it's a cool place where the game is right now.
Yeah. I agree with you that, and I was very influenced by as a younger coach, by people who brought that mentality. And I think I started off, you got to hoard your secrets kind of thing. And then what I actually started to realize, as I moved through my coaching journey, was that when you put your stuff out there and quote other people, take it or whatever, it forces you then to get better, because if they know what you're doing offensively, for example, and they prepare their defense to take away certain actions that you're running or whatever, it then forces my players to be able to make higher level reads. So
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. I think for the most part, so many people, and you look what's on social media, the stuff that's being shared there on, like you can't even keep up with it.
No, Tyler Costin is coming up with new stuff every day. It's so
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
you don't have to follow anybody else because it's like, oh yeah, I really think I got it down. Oh, he changed it. He changed it.
Yeah. No,
He added
it's one of
something.
the many things I admire about Tyler is like Tyler is so on top of the like the emerging trends, and his capacity to sort of absorb new material is impressive.
See, one thing that really inspires me, or I really admire, is creative people, like
Yes.
truly creative people. I think I can take maybe Tyler's concepts and pick and choose and pull what works and make it work with our guys. But I'm not creating anything from scratch. I
Right.
just that's not me. But those
Yeah.
guys that can, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
not envy, not that. I just really admire it. I think it's
I admire
special.
it too,
Yeah.
because that's not me either. I'm not like I'm an applier. I'm not a like someone
That's who we are. We are
who
appliers.
yeah, appliers. Yeah, makes it sound pretty pedestrian there, but like yeah, some people like Tyler and others have that ability to put a label on something and sort of create a package of it and then it fits together.
So all the culture things you've been able to learn, one through PGC, I think just in itself with shape and
Yep.
how you learn to run a session, you're basically learning how to run a program. But what's one of your favorite culture building activities?
Yeah, and I again, like everything, like most of us in coaching, I borrow like a champion. And one of the books I read as a younger coach was "The Winner Within" by Pat Riley, and in it he talks about team covenants, and that teams have either like sort of a like an unhealthy covenant that guides their behavior, or a healthy covenant. And obviously for me, covenant, it has a lot of faith implications
Yeah.
in it.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I do with all my teams is we create a team covenant. And I don't do it first day of the season, like that's too early. But it's earlier in the season, like usually 3 or 4 weeks into the season, and it's a very intentional process where we focus in on what we want to commit to and how we're going to demonstrate that commitment. And obviously, when it starts, the athletes want to focus on, well, we want to win a champion, we want to win the city championship. And so part of the steering I do in that process is to, hey, let's focus what we're committing to on things that are completely within our control.
Yeah.
So they become very process oriented, but it's really the focus on like what do we commit to, and then how do we demonstrate that commitment. And so it takes, oh, like at the university level, we spent like a whole afternoon at our team retreat developing the covenant. Obviously, in a high school setting, we had less time to do that, but it's a process where everyone's expected to have input, and then I take all the scattered thoughts, I put it into a document that I bring back to the athletes to say, hey, like, what's your feedback on this? Does this capture what this group wants to? And once we've aligned on it, we then print up a copy for everyone, we laminate it, it then goes on in a locker or someplace that they will see it on a daily basis. And then really my role as a coach, and then the roles of the leaders on the team, are to enforce that covenant, like and uphold the covenant. And when we see behavior that doesn't align with that covenant, we refer back to it. So yeah, I think that I would say has probably been my most successful culture building activity.
Coach, that's really good. And there's so much to unpack there, but a few things I thought of is one, or maybe a question: what made you think of not starting it at the beginning of the season?
I think the first time I did it, Matt, I actually did do it like 3 days into the season or something. And what I found was that there wasn't enough trust within the group yet to have like honest discussions, right? Like
Yeah.
it became a bit of boilerplate kind of platitudes. And I really want the covenant to be different every year. Like I want it to be a reflection of this group that we have together. And often there's, athletes that were on the team the previous year, which they bring sort of that mindset to it. But it was really so I started with Pat Riley's ideas, but I wanted to make it concrete. I wanted it to be written. I wanted it to be visible. And I don't think that Pat Riley was doing that with his teams, but I just thought it was something that would help guide us through a long season.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money with, if you start whatever culture you're trying to establish, if it's words, phrases, or just an idea or covenant, like I love that word too, like you said, and that can, especially at a private Christian school like I'm at, you can really take that a lot of directions. And so, and I'm guilty when we're talking right now, I'm guilty of the first day of the school year telling my players what the first part of our culture is and setting the standard of cramming it right down their throat. There's this idea of players being co-designers of the culture. I mean, they're the ones living in it just like we are as coaches. And so I think there's the brilliance in what you did is that you allowed them to also shape the culture. But then by starting later on, 3-4 weeks into it, Alex Sarama with Basketball Immersion talked about that. He said he doesn't start his culture first day or first couple weeks. It's later on. One, like you said, I mean, players are kind of on their best behavior the first few days. Yep. You really get to see, they know who each other are 3, 4, 5 weeks into it. But then you also see like maybe if excellence, or let's just say toughness, if toughness is a part of your culture, but you know what, like this team's they're pretty tough. Like that's not something we really need to focus on. You know that. I think how many cultures are set as coaches, we set them, but we're really just hitting the things that they already do really, really well. We're not even addressing some of the things that might be deficits that will help us win at some point. So some great nuggets there, Coach. Take me through a little bit more of that process of you're kind of sitting around that afternoon, and how do you get them started with those conversations of, hey, who do we want to be? How do we want to show up?
Yeah. So again, you got to be, obviously work within the time limits you have. So when I did my team retreat with my university team, and we spent the afternoon, like I actually started with them in small groups and gave them a piece of chart paper that, and we had them begin by focusing on what do they want to commit to, like the what part. And so they then, did it in groups of 3 or 4 and came back and presented. And that's, I'm sure we'll get into this in other parts of our discussion, but I'm just so big on having players use their voices, like literally use their voices. And I think that, Matt, from my experience coaching both guys and girls, we culturize our male athletes so often to just give one-word answers.
Yeah, you're in the military. Yeah,
right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I'm huge on force feeding them into like having to talk in front of the group and not just give one-word answers. So yeah, but so the girls then presented what they thought. It then led to kind of let's amalgamate these ideas, put them together into and then once we had a rough ballpark of what we were going to commit to, then the second part was like, what are ways that we can demonstrate this commitment? Because I think that tends to operationalize it a little bit more. Like, we know what we're committed to, but how are we going to not really have like measurement points along the way, but like, what does being committed to this look like?
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoe 360, the future of basketball is here. So you've coached so many different levels and boys and girls, which is unique.
Yeah.
So if I was a player, and even though there might be different, there may be some differences from program to program over the years, what were the standards and pillars of your programs?
So for me, I'd say that the bedrocks were a commitment to academic performance. And I was not a coach who believed in minimum averages per se, GPAs, because from my perspective, just like we have, different levels of athletes on our team, we have different levels of students on our team.
Yeah.
And so a minimum GPA might be vastly selling some of my athletes short because they're capable of much, much higher. And other athletes, potentially could be losing the opportunity even beyond my team just because despite really working really, really hard, they weren't meeting a certain GPA or right.
Yeah.
So I was never like my focus on the academic part was to be working to your ability, and I always tried to create open lines of communication with staff members to, so that they could share concerns with me if athletes weren't living up to it. And so academic excellence was a huge piece of it. Secondly, I always wanted to maintain a focus on being a great teammate. Being coachable in terms of the player-coach relationship, but also having genuine engagement, connection to your teammates, and realizing that there's going to be different roles on teams. And that's one of the things I often tell young coaches is you got to get used to the idea that there's probably only one or maybe two players on your team that are actually really happy about the role they're playing. Like almost everyone else is going to want a bigger role in
point. Yeah.
In some way. And so being able to genuinely celebrate the contributions of all 12 members of your team, right? Like that everyone could, something we talk about at PGC, but that everyone has a chance to star in their role, whatever that role may be. And then I would say the third pillar for me was about being just good people. I enjoy being around, people that, are living life the right way. Just this past weekend, I was absolutely honored and thrilled. On Friday, I was at a wedding of a former player.
Nice.
And then Saturday, I was at a wedding where both of them had played for me. And
what side did you sit on?
Well, the good news they were both outdoor weddings, so it was a little bit less casual. But I would not have been. And the fact that they're both like Carly and Jasper are two of my favorite athletes ever, and then they ended up marrying each other. It's even better. So
that's cool. I love that idea too about the academic standards. Because at Faith we talk a lot about excellence. Excellence isn't perfection, and sometimes there is a class where excellence for that student, they go to tutoring, they work hard, they have no zeros, they study their tails off, and it's right about at a 75.
Right.
But in their mind, they've done their very, very best. Yep. How often do we set standards, hard, fast standards that make our players, this could even be with skill, in within a team workout, we make a standard that just makes our players feel awful about themselves. They're like, man, it doesn't really matter how hard I work. I know I can't do that. And so I think great point about whether it's academic standards, playing standards, skill-based things, that we are pushing them forward to continue to grow, but also celebrating. And this idea of celebrating the try has come up quite a bit with a lot of coaches because I don't know about you, when I played, I didn't feel like it was more Yoda, right? Like do or do not. There is no try.
Correct.
But sometimes trying is what we need them to do, and it's enough.
Yeah. Well, here's an interesting one for you. And again, this I did with my university girls. in Canada here, we have something known as an academic All-Canadian, which means you play a varsity sport and you have we don't use GPAs up in Canada, but that you have an over 80 average. And so it led, one of the things they wanted to commit to was a certain number of academic All-Canadians. And they literally, as a team, went around and said whether they themselves thought they could achieve academic All-Canadian status. And the, 5 of the girls, I remember this distinctly, 5 of the girls said, yeah, I think I can be an academic All-Canadian. So that was what we said as one of our commit twos, was to have 5 academic All-Canadians. Well, just that act of measuring it that way was now, like, man, when their midterm marks came out, we had a discussion about who was on track to be an academic All-Canadian, and there was like that year 7 of them ended up doing it, but it had raised, and now it was something that they were almost committing to, not only personally but to a team. So it really helped to raise the bar for us.
Yeah, it seems like there's something about asking players if they feel like they can do something, and letting them honestly answer that. It made me think of the story with Coach K and Grant Hill. When Grant Hill, as a freshman, threw that pass to Leitner against Kentucky in the timeout, Coach K asked him, Grant, can you make that pass? And he thought about it. He's like, yes, I can. There's something about them as a player, them choosing to do something rather than being told you have to do this or else.
Right. Yeah. I think, especially with today's athletes, I think that sense of ownership, when we can encourage it, and they don't even necessarily realize that they're taking ownership of it. It's not being imposed on hey, our team average must be this, or you must have a minimum average to participate. I think the ownership piece is huge.
I played high school basketball 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago. And I feel like what we're talking about is very different from the experience I had. And I would imagine,
I had too,
I would imagine for you. And so my question is what we're talking about just the way that it should have been done anyway, or are kids different, so we have to do it this way now?
It's such a great question. I'm definitely not someone who looks back at the past with either saying, hey, those were the good old days, or those were the bad old days. Like, I think there's definitely things we can pull forward, and there's definitely things that we need to leave behind. But one of the things that, I firmly believe that I became a better coach when I got out of the mentality that coaching was yelling at people, and that sort of a more of a fear-based, and I still see some coaches that I think fit into that mode, that and even parents, that if you're not yelling at their kids, they think you're not coaching them. And that was where PGC obviously had a huge influence on me. But I feel like my teams always had this reputation for being super gritty and hardworking and tough. And I thought it was because I yelled at them, and that's because I was yelled at as a player. And that, man, we got tougher the more I yelled at them. And once I was a bit scared to stop doing that, because I made a conscious decision to stop, only to yell at very, very selectively. And it was, as you can guess, Matt, it made no difference in terms of how tough my kids were.
Right. Their life experiences. Their life experience. I mean, when I was at McKinney High School, we had a kid living out of his car. He was tough. He was tough. I didn't have to yell at him to make him any tougher. If anything, I needed just to love on him. And it's a regret. It's a regret looking back. It was pre-PGC. And I actually, since I have apologized to him for. There's one conversation in particular that we had that, golly, man, well, I'd love to go back and do that over. Yeah. It's so interesting, that you brought that up about yelling and the changes. So this year, we had a player come, and I always hesitate as a private school to say we had a player come over. He came to our school and interviewed and did all the things that he had to do, but from a bigger public school around here. And one of our first few workouts, he said, Coach Saman, I want you to just so you know, I want you to coach me hard. And I said, well,
Mm-hmm.
what do you mean by that? And he said, I don't mind if you yell at me, you get after me a little bit. I said, man, I appreciate you telling me that. Just so you know, I'm probably not going to do that. Like I'm probably not going to just rip you apart and tear you a new one. But what I am going to do is teach you a ton. I'm going to hold you. I'm going to set standards, hold you to those standards. But it's rarely going to be from a yell. You know why? Like I'm having too much fun doing this. Like I enjoy being with you guys. I'm not upset. I'm not angry, and I don't feel like that'll make you any better. And so, but those are those conversations that it was interesting to me. Like, why did he want that? Yeah. It's because that's what he's had.
That's what he's been conditioned to, right?
Yeah.
Like I've literally had parents come to me and say the exact same thing. Like, listen, I want you to coach my kid hard, and and I don't see you yelling at them. You feel free to yell at them. And I'm going, hey, that's an old image of what a coach is. Even like I read a year and a half ago when it came out, I read Nick Nurse's book about sort of coaching the Raptors through to the championship. And Nick Nurse said as a professional coach, he thinks you can go off on your players twice in a year. Like, he's like the rest of the time it has to be way more collaborative than that. Like, and when you think about that, like that was actually, Matt, the big turnaround for me, like was getting involved with PGC, starting to learn more about coaching. And then like you and I met, like I'm about 6'4", and I suddenly had this vision of me yelling at a 15-year-old girl. And like, what is that communicating to her? Yeah, that's it's okay for men to yell at you, and you have to, because you're an athlete, you have to take that. And same with young males, like there's a power dynamic difference. And I just decided that wasn't going to be something that was that I was going to do anymore. Like that was just sending the wrong messages on a whole bunch of levels.
Good. What's your favorite style of basketball to teach?
Okay. So I've been in transition towards more transition. So early in my coaching career, Matt, I was very half court oriented, both offensively and defensively. I didn't believe that you could run your way to significant victories.
So the phrase "running to win," you disagreed with that?
Well, I felt it was a regular season way to win, right? Like, and teams that would press you and stuff like this. So I was my teams were known as very, very like high execution offensively and defensively in the half court. However, as I've evolved as a coach, I now see the game being played more and more in transition. And depending on what level, like, somewhere 30-40% of the game minimum is played in transition. So I've become, I've tried to raise the bar for myself to teach and coach better in both. And so what I've tried to do, I'll share this with you and the listeners, like just like it's nothing earth shattering, but like in offensive transition, we have like we have a three-part hierarchy, I would call it. Number one is the first thing we want is a finish at the rim. That's our most desired outcome. A second one is to shoot the open three. I believe, I know not every coach will believe this, that open three in transition may be the best shot you're going to get. So I want them to shoot the open three. And then the third one is, if we don't have the first two, is to initiate half court offense. We want to edit out the mid-range 15-foot shot in transition. So the hierarchy there is finish at the rim, open three, run offense. In transition defense, again, we have another three-point hierarchy. First one is to slow the ball down. Like, I think the thing that kills you in transition is not even so much the ball being dribbled in a straight line, it's the ball being passed up the court. Like when someone can make that chest pass and cover 30 or 40 feet of the court in one pass. So like we really got to get pressure on the ball enough to either slow it down with the dribble or take away that penetrating pass. Second one is to protect the rim, and that is a one-player job. Like, we need to get one player into the paint. And then the third priority is to match up on shooters. And again, that obviously that's a bit of a know your personnel routine is if you're running back, you got to know, and you're not stopping the ball and you're not protecting the rim, you've got to know who the next dangerous shooter is and get back in transition defense out to those.
I love the clarity that you have with both sides of the ball. And I think maybe something too picked up from PGC is teaching in threes.
Yes.
You know, if you have a list of 8 things, how can you narrow that down, make it more concise? Ever ask your players offensively when leather touches our fingertips, what's our order of operations? See what they say.
Yep.
If they have 20 answers, we're bad teachers.
Correct.
And we
well, it's one of the things that I take pride in is I know that my players know those 3 offensive and 3 defensive priorities. Like we drill that. We actually say them as a team. Like, you know, my players know what the order of operations is in transition.
Yeah. You know, I wonder how many coaches out there they've never written their philosophy down on either side of the ball. And up until about 6 months ago, I was the same way. I know how to teach it. I can go to a practice and I can teach it, but you need me to send you something? I don't have that. And so United Basketball Plus asked me to do a deep dive. And I mean, you don't want to say no. What is that like? What does that mean if I say no? I don't want to, you know, am I one of those coaches I'm just holding on to it, or I want to share what I'm doing? So I said, yeah, I'll do that. And they said, yeah, I got 45 minutes, like 45 minutes. And then I realized that I don't have, they wanted, our offense is called flow, and they wanted me to show some of the actions. And coach, I watched 5 games and I had very few clips of the half court offensive actions that we do, because I realized it was like a light bulb moment. We are a transition team. Our offense is a transition offense. When leather touches our fingertips, we have very simple principles that my players can instinctively do. We take no time, and there's no such thing as setting up anything. And like you said before, getting those types of shots in transition, they are definitely better than what a majority of teams get after 5 to 6 to 8 passes within any offensive scheme. But I had to somehow describe that and then use some clips and then find a few things. But I love what you said, making that transition yourself to playing more of a transition, because we got to think about what are, in my opinion, what's the toughest thing defensively to do as a team, and then individually to do. In my opinion, it's transition defense, hardest thing to do as a team.
Totally.
Closing out, hardest thing to do individually.
Yep.
Offensively, how can we create those 2 things more?
Yep.
And it's your transition concepts.
Yeah, and you know, they're obviously, you've got to give your team, you know, you got to take from the hierarchy that we just talked about to actually saying, okay, this is what it looks like, you know. And I'm a big believer, you got to get a guy into each corner, right? You just got to stretch the floor, and so that sprint's got to get to the corner. But what I've done in the last 5 years too, Matt, is in our transition, I call it secondary offense, like, you know, I think a lot of coaches are using that terminology now, but like I've become very just like trigger oriented, meaning that like if the ball's passed, you know, to the strong side wing, if that's where the entry happened, it then initiates this action.
Yep.
If the ball goes to the trail post, it initiates this action. If the ball's skipped, it initiates that. And so those kind of makes you a lot harder to scout, because not many people are going into that level of detail. But it also it gives them a, you know, because our basic rule is, hey, if you can just beat your player, go do it, right? Like that's the highest form of offense. But it gives them a plan. Like we know what our spacing looks like, and if we don't get that finish at the rim or an open 3, then we're going to, you know, initiate some kind of what I call trigger.
I like that. So you have your offensive, defensive concepts. I think the next question or maybe argument is, can you make that work with any type of player, or do you have to change things depending on the players that you have? System or players, coach? What is it?
Yeah, I am a player's coach, and I'll tell you why, Matt. Because like I think there's a chunk of it that has to be the same, like from the skill development viewpoint. Like so ball handling, passing, shooting, decision making, off ball movement. Like I think all of your players, if you're really going to be successful, have have to level up across all those areas. But if I think, and I again, and when you coach as long as I have, I've coached like I've had teams that literally boys teams that were literally like we had like two boys go D1 like at 6'11" and 6'8". Well, you better believe we became a very very proficient high low kind of team, because we could do things like inside that nobody else could do. I've also coached teams of like that where we were really tiny and we had to put a lot of pressure on the ball and try to play all 94 feet. So I think that part of it is wanting me as a coach to win. Like I'm competitive, I want to win, but I think it's also then trying to showcase your athletes in the places that they will have the best ability to display their assets. And so, for example, if I had taken my small shifty teams and tried to do a lot of high low stuff with them, that wouldn't be showcasing anything that they were going to be good at. And so I think it's both helping our program win, but it's also putting our athletes in the best case scenario to showcase their potential to play at the next level. What about you? What's your theory?
I don't get a lot of questions back this way. Sometimes I volunteer what I think, and then other times just let it go on. But well, it's concepts that make your players be the best versions of themselves.
Yeah.
So it's players, but then there's a way of teaching that I do enjoy, but it has to be able to shift and change. And the reason I've been able to get to that point is because I went the other way and suffered because of it. Starting off in Faith, inherited a great senior class that took the identical system at my previous school with very different clientele at a big public school, came here. They took it, ran with it, and it was just a thing of beauty. I mean, talk about like, lightning in a bottle type of scenario where averaged 82 points a game, hit a bunch of threes. And they had never done that before. And then, Coach, the worst thing ever is I thought it's the system. Yeah. It's me. It's the system. I don't care what Joes are in the gym. We can do this thing. Losing season the next year, didn't make playoffs. And then I start, okay, well, we got to go faster. We need more speed and more frustration from my players, going to some styles and systems. If you're familiar with Grinnell, I love the system, and there's a lot of it that just rings true through me. I think I could be a system coach, but at high school where you're not recruiting your players,
that's it.
Almost had a mutiny. I had to really mid-season shift. Losing season, didn't make playoffs. And throughout all of this system talk, you had mentioned it, and I don't think it's bad. Like you said, we don't need to apologize for being competitive as coaches and wanting to win, because most likely our players are competitive and they want to win. I think when you go system too far, it's almost like you want to be known for just the style of play and threes and speed and 5 in, 5 out. But then winning takes a back seat to that sometimes. We are who we are, no matter what. And if we don't win, who cares? That's dangerous. And you'll lose some of those players that are competitive, do want to play at the next level, do want to grow. So taking a more of approach of, okay, parents will ask me, is winning all that you care about? Heck no. Of course not. We're not here for that. We're going to grow the individual. We're also going to develop them as a player. But Tuesdays and Fridays, for those 32 minutes, we're going to do everything we can to win. We're not going to experiment. We're going to play the players that help us do that.
Yes.
And unashamedly, but that took some time because, man, playing time it's one of my least favorite things. And I don't like kids feeling like they're not, but so being able to it kind of goes back to, and I'm rambling now, it's your fault. You did this. Going back to how you train your players and the concepts that you're asking them to play within. I can tell my parents, I can't guarantee you any playing time, but I can guarantee you development, because parents and players sometimes equate playing time with development. And I disagree with that completely. I will develop them. I mean, the 43 minutes we just spent in the athletic period, every kid had a ball in their hand. They're all getting developed.
Yeah.
But on Tuesdays and Fridays, we're going to play the guys at every level that help us win. That, to me, within our system, which is really just concepts that we play, what we believe in, it happens to fit the players that we have and could change from year to year a little bit. But that idea of we are developing you as a person and a player, and we're also here to win. That's been a really healthy thing for us.
Yeah, it sounds like you have gone on a similar journey to me. Like early in my coaching career, I was really big on that every kid's going to play in every game, and
it sounds great.
I definitely lost games, but I was kind of stubborn about it, but I have now morphed into like the highest respect. Like if the team is the thing that I have to be the most loyal to as a coach, and I do believe that my loyalty to the team has to exceed my loyalty to any individual player, and I believe that we should be teaching young men and women how to win, right? That winning is important in life, and that, so we want to compete, and therefore I owe it to my players to have an honest discussion with them about where I see them fitting in, and I'll just share this insight that I've gleaned over time, Matt, is that I think it's players, if you were to do your depth chart, it's players 8, 9, and 10, or 9 and 10 that often have the hardest role to accept. 11 and 12, they know they're pretty much not.
I get it. I see him. I see me. I get it.
I get it. 1 to 5 kind of know where they fit. 6 and 7 know, hey, they know they're going to get a lot of playing time. But 8, 9, and 10, like, there may be games where, hey, you guys get a fair bit of playing time, right? Where like maybe the starters aren't performing up to task, and we need a jolt of energy. But there may be games when, hey, those top 7 are playing so well that I'm not going to disrupt their rhythm by giving you minutes that just so that you can be on the floor 10 minutes a game or something like that. And so I think you really do have to, early in the season, once you've established that, have those discussions with your players to say, hey, this is where I see you fitting in. This is what this role is going to look like. And now, I need to count on you to star in that role.
I love that. And I think too, it's when you train them all I think sometimes we train our stars differently than we train everybody else in practice. We give them more attention. They have more of the opportunities. We have more of those one-on-one conversations with them about leadership things. Like but one of the again, it goes back to PGC. One of the ways that they really help me is when you're directing a session, you have 120 athletes and back to basket instructors, but for some of those things, we're working on a specific skill. 120 of you come talk to me. Let me tell you something, go out and do it. And I'm really just going around and maybe saying a few things, seeing some things. I've had to take that same approach here, because a lot of time it's me and 30 athletes in second period, where I can't just give Johnny, who's our starting, we don't have positions, but starting playmaker, best playmaker, all the attention. When I see something from our freshman who I don't know, is going to play that much on any team, like I have to give him that attention. So, but my whole point, if you train all of them as if they're stars, so if it's good enough for him, it's got to be good enough for 7, 8, 9, 10. I don't know about you. I have been pleasantly surprised by players when I put them in at moments that I wasn't planning on. They step up, and it's the whole idea of staying ready versus getting ready. That
Yep.
sounds nice, but if you're not helping your players to stay ready and to really develop and improve their individual skill, then oh crap, like with COVID the last few years, when injuries happen with this, you're going to put a guy in there that's hasn't been getting any of the reps, any of the development, and you might be in trouble then.
Yeah, no, I agree totally. Like, I think what underlies a lot of what you were saying, Matt, is that like that unapologetically high standards for all your athletes, like that you expect them to be engaged in the practices, and you expect them to be getting better because you don't know when your opportunity is going to come up. And I think there's also, I believe as a coach, and I think up here in Canada, we sometimes have a bit more control over our high school schedules than a lot of the American situations. I think part of that too is building into your scheduling process like some games where you can make sure that these guys are getting an opportunity to, to shine. And again, I've had the chance to coach some really successful teams up here, and I, even with my best teams, like we'd be in the best tournaments for like most of the season, but I'd make sure, even if it was maybe I thought we were going to be able to run the show in our league, so okay, I'm going to get you guys are going to get some time during league games, but like I think as coaches we can find ways to give those lower level kids on our team a chance to shine.
A great point. I think definitely there's an art to scheduling that sometimes you have to fail at it early on. You have to make those mistakes. And a mistake I made was not, and there's a school in DFW called Dallas Jesuit, and that hit the coach Chris Hill. I had a hoops talk with him, and he just said something that really I've never forgot. Like there's a lot in our talk today that I think I won't forget that. That was a really good nugget. And one thing he said was that you have to treat every season like it's new. And how often do we really just last year's schedule, copy, paste?
Yeah.
But you graduated people, you've got new players in. Is that team identical? What are those other teams doing? And so the art of it is, because then and you got the other side of it where guys are like, well, just schedule hard no matter what. They'll get tougher from that. Well, if you got kids living out of a car, maybe they can handle that. If you got silver spoon kids that have never really handled adversity, be careful, because you rock their confidence too much. They start to think they suck. They start to believe that. So sprinkling in those games where I've just, there's, me and my assistant coach have had this discussion of the game comes in, you thought the team was going to be really good. Then they're warming up and you got to be careful of the eye test, but the game begins and you realize your team's at another level. Not only getting those guys in, but sometimes it's really nice when they're able to execute and do the things that you ask them to do, and they see the ball go through the rim. I've seen, instead of coaches being like, "Oh, this is a waste," I've seen us really gain confidence and catapult forward from having that success.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Like, and I think another thing that I see sometimes young coaches struggle with is like, they maybe now emptied their bench. It's either they're plus 30, they're minus 30, what their bench kids are in, and they stop coaching because the game's over, right? But I think that's an opportunity where you got to coach the heck out of if you've got your bottom 5 kids on for the last 6 minutes of the game, you've got to in your own mind, make the score 0-0, and you want to coach those kids and help them stay organized. Because you and I know one of the biggest things they probably are going to struggle with is just being organized out there. And there's sometimes where I will deliberately put on my best playmaker with the 4 weakest kids on the team, just so that they can stay organized. And I'll make sure that kid understands, hey, your role is not to score here. I don't want to embarrass the other coach or anything like that, but just so that those, the 4 other weakest kids can have some success, right? They've got a table setter out there for them. I think there are ways you can find opportunities for those kids at the bottom.
That's a great nugget too, because when you do put those players in that don't normally get time, their stakeholders are watching very closely. Their parents, the select coach that came to watch them play. You
Yes.
finally get them in, the grandparents that are there. And I mean, you want to maybe eliminate some of the headache, coach them just like you coach 1 through 5. And I think that's a good nugget.
Yeah, I've literally seen coaches, like they've been standing the whole game
Yep.
with their clipboard, and they literally will sit down, put the clipboard into their coaching bag, and sort of like as in we're just riding out these next 6 minutes, like, and like, hey,
those kids deserve better than that. They deserve better than that.
Take a timeout, like so that you can coach them up. Like, see if you can run a set with those guys, or see if you can make a defensive adjustment with those guys. Like, make them. And again, if you that also like it creates a positive team culture, right?
Yeah.
Like if the best kids see you coaching these younger kids, weaker kids, it also then allows them to get excited when those kids have success. Like if you've got your best kids on the bench, celebrating, not just that they scored a bucket, but that they're running good offense, or they're making good defensive rotations, and then the better kids are reinforcing that with the younger kids. Then what we're saying is everybody's role matters.
The Jamodi Podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
This one is, I think a lot of coaches, I'm down in Texas where football is king.
Yep.
And so many of us we deal with multiple sport athletes, and multiple sport athletes, there's this huge talk, or is it good or is it bad? Obviously it's good if the players want to do that. Correct. I'm not going to say it's bad if a player doesn't want to do that. Right. Like that's dumb, because I'm a product of specialization. After 8th grade, focused on one thing, worked out pretty darn good for me. This is like, I don't like that whole, it should be one or the other. But when we do have multiple sport athletes, what was the best way that you found to help them get acclimated or deal with them?
I love it. I think there's sort of I want to give two parts of the answer here, Matt. Number one is that conceptually, I support the idea of being 2 sport athletes. And so I would go so far as to say with younger athletes, I actually encourage it. Now, the question becomes, at what point do you have to start specializing?
Yes, we can't lump all of them together.
Correct.
Junior high and down, have fun, do everything, yes. Learn all those motor skills.
Correct. Yeah, and to me, I look at guys like like the Steve Nash. Like Steve Nash didn't start basketball till he was 9th grade, right? Like he was a soccer player before then, and like so I really do believe in and I'll even I'll tell you, I'll make it real for you. So I was coaching a group of very talented female athletes in our club system, club or AAU system, and I started with them in 7th grade and saw them through to university. And up till 10th grade, my expectation was that their high school sports would take priority over my team. So like if they were playing volleyball or something like this, they were in fact, they were empowered to miss my weekend basketball stuff in order to participate in high school volleyball or whatever the competing sport was. Once we hit 10th grade, it was now, hey, I still want you to play high school volleyball or whatever you're playing, but now you need to go have an adult discussion with your high school coach saying that, hey, you're choosing basketball as your priority, and that there will be certain weekends that you will not be available to the volleyball team because you're prioritizing basketball. Now, it's a really adult conversation for a 15-year-old to have with a coach, but it also then, like in every single one of the cases, it was like these girls were good enough athletes that the volleyball coach is going, yes, like, yeah,
whatever you want.
I'll take whatever you want as long as. And so I think it, like, for the and you hit the key thing. It's for athletes that want it, right? Like I have also coached athletes who have no other real interest besides basketball. Like that's where they want to prioritize. Well, they're the easy ones to,
Yeah.
they're going to be at every morning workout. They're going to be at, every optional thing that you can throw at them, they're going to be at. But when you, I'm sure, in football with your football team and stuff like that, there's times when you would love to get them more opportunities to be in the gym doing basketball, but you just have to say, hey, like, I know that's not going to work because you're a football player. So I think it's got to be what the athlete wants. I think if they do want it, we as the adults in the room should work in a way that allows it to be balanced out as best as we can. I know I would be frustrated. I was at a high school that we did, like as I was saying earlier, we do boys high school basketball in the winter. But I had, we were a successful school, so we had boys volleyball and boys football going on in the fall, and sometimes it really delayed the start of my season. Well, the start of my season. So I know the frustrations, but I think in the long run, even those seasons when I got off to slow starts, by the time it came crunch time in the season, I had those good athletes back into full basketball mode. We were rolling.
I think a big turning point for me was to stop thinking at them as my players, being so territorial. Like, I mean, they have parents. I'm not their parent.
Yes.
I have kids. Right. They're my kids. Yep. But our players aren't ours. And when they choose to be there, when they are in season, they're ours at that point. But then, like, what I don't like about the discussions that I see, and I think a lot of times, this, again, being down here in Texas, it's, you see, like Nick Saban said that he loves multiple sport athletes. That's great. Okay, that's fine. That doesn't change really anything. Or LeBron played football. Okay, yeah, you're right. LeBron could play football, and he's probably still pretty darn good in basketball when he came out. Like, let's not use the outliers as what everybody should do or work for everybody, because there's 6'2.5" non-athletic dudes like me that, in order to play college basketball, which if that's their dream, I have to focus. I have to do one thing. I cannot divide my time. I have to use my 84,000 seconds differently because I'm competing against other guys that are just like me for the same seats. LeBron wasn't competing with many people.
That's such a good point.
For his seat. So so I think you mentioned a few things. We need to establish with our players what they want.
Correct.
What do you want? Do you want to do both? Yeah, I really love football. Well, then, great, do it. And then there's no penalty from me outside of then I do think it's important to talk to them about the natural consequences.
That's a great way of
forced consequences from, oh, you did that. Well, you're not going to play. I'm not going to play over a straight basketball guy. No. If the way I'm training them, if their development happens maybe the way it should, you're going to come in and you're going to feel that. It's going to take you time to get this. And it's not a coach speak or a conversation like, well, if you do that, well, you're probably going to suck for 2 months. Like, don't do that, but lay out the natural consequences. And then if they still choose that, you're 100% behind them. You ask them about it. You're invested in that. And then when they come over, you love them just like the rest.
Exactly. And I like the word I would use is, this is not a punishment to you. Like, like if you're a football player who's coming in, it's just that, these other athletes have been working at this for 3 weeks, a month now, depending on how much the overlap is. And it's going to take you time to transition from football shape to basketball shape. And hey, when you caught up to the other athletes and understand our systems and are, ready to play, you're going to get every opportunity to have that. But and while they've been slaving away in the basketball gym, you've been having the benefits of being a football player and playing towards the end of a season. So I think the truly competitive athlete would understand that, right? Like, I think it's just an upfront discussion.
Yeah.
And
And then maybe you're able to tackle some other issues that the athlete might have, which is well, I want it, so I should get it. Well, no, that's not real life. And so let's have a real life conversation about what Dick DeVenzio used to say is life's not fair.
Yeah.
Life's not fair. But the thing is, what is fair is that if you're spending your time doing something else and there's other guys that have been focusing on this thing, when you come in, you're behind them. You have to work your tail off even more. That's fair. What's not fair is just So, but then there's another side of it too that we have to be careful of with the multiple sport guys is animosity from the ones that you have had in the gym, and having that conversation. You nailed it. Of guys, just remember this: you've been in the gym, and you feel like you're entitled to something, but you're not. This player, who's also one of our co-students at the school, has been competing in another way that, so we're not going to give him special treatment because of it, but we're definitely not. You haven't been doing anything. No, he's been grinding out there in the heat and smashing his head in, man.
But I've actually, you triggered something with me. I've had exactly that where, a talented football player comes back in and within maybe 2 weeks has suddenly claimed a significant role on the team. And then there's these other guys who's I've been here for 5 weeks and I've been, I've been in every morning workout and everything. And then then it's into that discussion of, okay, hey, if as coach, I'm prioritizing what's best for the team, then Johnny, the football player, has now earned himself into a position where he can help us more than maybe you can. And that's, again, just, it's not an easy conversation to have, but it's important, for those athletes to know that it's not all you've put in the most time, therefore you get the most reward.
Yep. And it goes full circle back to what we've said earlier, which is in your culture, I'm going to develop you, but our goal is to win.
Yes.
And that goes both ways. It goes with the guy that has been grinding, came to every morning workout for the last 2.5 months. And then after it was 7 or 8 years ago, we had a football player who was new to our school. He was a senior, which is rare at Faith for a guy to come in only for 1 year because they have so many Bible classes that they have to make up. So he did 2 Bible classes in the summer leading up into the year, 2 Bible classes during his season to get his 4. But man, I mean, I really didn't know if he could play or not. A couple of the guys had said, yeah, we've seen him play pickup. And, we start off school, he's in football, good looking kid. And then he comes out and just in 2 days, we realized he's better.
Yeah, he's a stud.
And we just put him right out there and, I think lost a kid after that season because of it, and understood that and still said hello to him in the hallway the next year and still know his dad. But at the same time, I think I did right by the better player, the other players that are invested in winning. And it is, but it's never going to be simple, but that's to me, what's fair.
Yes. You and I are completely on the same page.
But coaches, do not tell me that because LeBron played football.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's like I've often wondered with a guy like Jalen Suggs, when you're Mr. Basketball and Mr. Football in your state, you're clearly just the best. You could have probably been Mr. Soccer, Mr. Volleyball.
He really would have been. He would have been double Mr. Basketball if he hadn't played football. No, he is an outlier.
He's an outlier. Yeah.
You go to majority of these D1s and basketball teams and you look at their roster and you ask them, a few years ago, I looked up how many multiple sport athletes were on Kentucky's team with Calipari. 1. And what was the multiple sport? Volleyball, which does translate. Yeah. Because it's skill based. Obviously, the athleticism helps. I had one football coach here at Faith. We were in the weight room talking, and I try to hold back how I really feel, because if you're talking with somebody that's coming from just a completely different viewpoint, then I just don't want to argue. Right. So I'm holding it back. And he's like, well, what about the athleticism and the toughness, competitive? And I said, yeah, I do love that. I love I love how physical they are, but you know what? We got fouls. Like
Yeah,
there's rules set in place that you just can't knock his head off. And like
good point.
when he has the ball in his hands, can he shoot? Can he handle it? Is he a liability? Like it's more than especially the way we play. If we're playing in transition, it's hard to play a guy that on the floor can't have the ball in his hands is a problem. So, but yeah, those are fun conversations.
Absolutely.
What's one rule change that you would want and why?
Oh, um, there's a couple. So
Okay,
I know.
what are some rule changes?
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'll do them real quick. Number one is I am a huge proponent, and I know this won't resonate with all of your listeners, but I'm a huge proponent of shot clocks. I was up here in Canada. We went to shot clocks about 15 years ago, maybe no, 10 years ago, 10 to 15 years ago in high school and club ball. I was, as a high control coach, I will admit I was hesitant about it. It made me really nervous. But now having seen the benefits of it, I think it improves the game. I think it forces more decision making and creativity on the athletes and takes it a little bit out of the coach's hands. And so I think one of the reasons Canadian basketball has zoomed ahead so much is because we the introduction of the shot clock. So I am a proponent of that. I know more and more American states are, and there's some states that are not moving in that direction. But I would think that within 10 years, I hope everyone's playing with some version of a shot clock. It doesn't with the younger ages. It doesn't have to be 24 seconds. Like uh, we can be 35 seconds or 30 seconds, but I think the idea that you're playing against the clock matters. It also means there's more possessions per
Yeah.
game. I think it's just better for the game.
Better players. And let me ask you this question before you go to the second one, because
Sure.
the in Texas we don't have one.
Right.
And it's something that there are some of the like shot clock warriors out there, like Tommy Brackle, that is a coach down here that they're really pushing hard for it. And I would love to see it, even though I don't feel like offensively I ever see it. It wouldn't really matter to us. Defensively, I think it could make us better. I think it would make us better. But the lazy answer is we can't afford it, or we don't have the manpower to make it work. How do you guys do those things?
Really good question. And that was one of the concerns I had as well. And I'll just say this: in Canada, especially in the high school settings, our athletic budgets are way smaller than in the normal American school. Like we sadly devote way less attention to sports than the average American's high school, and we've been able to make it work. Like it's funny when it's just an expectation that you're going to have someone operating the score clock, someone doing the score sheet, and you're going to need someone to operate the 3-point the shot clocks.
Yeah.
You just do it, right? Like it's just once it's been mandated. And the actual cost of the shot clocks themselves, again, compared to what you're spending in other parts of your program, it's a one-time expense.
Yep.
You just have to do it. And until it becomes mandated, then because then now if it's mandated, now the school district is probably the one paying for the shot clocks, right? They're saying, hey, like that'd be like sending a kid out there without a helmet. Like it's just part of the expenses of basketball.
I wish we could, but we couldn't make it work.
That's right. They now have a shot, so I think it's doable. And it was vastly unpopular not vastly, it was largely unpopular up here among a lot of coaches when it was mandated, but it was driven by sort of the national by our Canadian basketball governing body, and then it filtered down to the provincial bodies, and they were the ones who pushed through on it, and it's improved our game without question. And then the second one, Matt, that I would, and I know it's really difficult to police, but is to eliminate zone defense for anything younger than high school.
Yeah.
I was taught Rudy Bentley, a PGC director, and I were talking about this, and he was coaching a 5th grade AAU team this year, and he said, I guess it would be now this last season. he said that about 75% of the teams he played against were sitting in a 2-3 zone in 5th grade. And yeah, they win because no one can throw passes across the court and nobody can shoot the ball well enough. But I really believe that it's a detriment to athletes to teach them zone at too young an age. It robs them of their potential to become good man-to-man defenders down the road. You and I know that down the road, like if you're a good zone defender, it's because you're a good man-to-man defender, right?
It's the defense behind all the other defenses, just the way that dribble drive motion is the offense behind many continuities now.
Correct. That's a great parallel there. I co-sign that with you.
I like that change. I came around on zone at the high school level about three seasons ago, and where we're now kind of known as a pressure zone team. But at those younger levels, when my son was coming up through select ball, and it was like, okay, like zones or presses, it's fool's gold. I mean, it's false success.
Yeah,
you're doing something against another team that can't do anything back. And I think at the end of the day, sadly, it comes down to the amount of money that people are making coaching these teams, or how badly the coaches want to win, or even parents want to win, but they don't realize the cost, the developmental cost that's happening.
Yeah, I am in high. Once they hit high school, I am 100% comfortable with zone. Like I'm not anti-zone. Like depending on my personnel, there's definitely times when I play more zone than not. I think, especially just as a tactical thing to change what the offense is doing and get them on a rhythm, I think zones absolutely have a place. But I think before high school, if we would all just commit to it, right? But so I'll tell you, you'll get a kick out of this. So they have put this rule in Ontario, and coaches are so smart, but they're also so like self-defeating. So they made, how do you enforce that it's not a zone? Well, then they say, okay, you have to be within X number of feet of the person you're guarding, right? So how did the coaches that were committed to winning, isolate your best ball handler on the right side of the floor, go put the other 4 guys standing on the sideline of the left sideline, and now
it was James Harden. James Harden was
yes. The defenders have to be within 3 feet of them, and now you're just playing 1-on-1. And now I would pull my son or daughter off that team if I was playing, but that's how coaches started to think, was how do I game this so that I can punish them for not being able to play zone defense. And
I'll show you.
Yeah. And I would say, no, I think you can teach, good help defense principles without it being a zone. And I think if you could just get all the coaches into the headspace of, hey, let's do what's good for kids here. And from up to grade 8th grade, who cares about the winning? Like it really doesn't matter. As much as we get wrapped up in it when we're coaching at that level, it really doesn't matter. If every youth coach could simply have the focus of, I want to do the best job I can of preparing these athletes for success at high school, like that would be nirvana.
Coach, the speed round, short questions. First thing that pops in your head, blurt it out. You ready?
Okay. Yep.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Pralines and cream.
Wow. I'm not going to ask you this one because usually I ask for high school shot clock or no shot clock. I have that answer. I'm going to ask you a different basketball question, and this is a first. I've never done this before.
I love it.
You're up 3 with 7 seconds left. You're on defense. Do you foul or do you defend it out?
I'm going to defend it out, but only because most likely I haven't practiced that. If I have practiced the fouling situation so that I trust that my players know the kind of foul to commit, then I would do it. But if I haven't practiced it, specifically practice that, then we're gonna trust the defense.
You cheated in your answer.
Like any good coach.
That's right. Favorite place to travel?
My wife Lori and I did the cruise to the Greek islands.
Oh,
It was amazing.
I'd like to do that. Favorite basketball movie of all time?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I'll go with Hoosiers.
Yeah, that's the standard.
Yeah,
Um, in men's basketball, who is the GOAT?
Jordan.
It's like 95%, and
Yeah,
across all the coaches.
like I have come to peace with the fact that LeBron will have the greatest career that anyone
Hmm.
has ever had. Like
Yeah,
like
his
I
longevity is
his
incredible.
longevity
Yeah,
and productive longevity. Like it's not like he's Vince Carter out there, like just
that's right.
it's unbelievable. But
Occasionally hitting a three and a layup, and yeah,
right,
he's
like
averaging 25 still.
yeah, like I think last year LeBron averaged almost close to 30 a game.
Yep.
But and again, I judge harshly, but like he laid in my from my perspective, he laid down against the Boston Celtics in I want to say when he was with Cleveland, like he laid down in the Eastern Conference Finals, and he laid down against the Mavericks in
Yep. Yeah.
2012, 2013, and I
It,
never saw.
it
Yes,
it
he did.
sticks in your brain
Yeah,
because we never saw Jordan do
Jordan
that.
never.
Yeah.
Jordan never gave up.
I call
Like
it defer. I think LeBron, he's very unselfish and
yes,
he defers too much. Like there's times where I'm
correct.
like, you need to just bulldoze over people right
Yes,
now.
right.
But I think there's this idea behind him, the Magic Johnson esque that he has of, I really want this ball to move. I want them to
Yeah,
feel like they're part of it. It appears to me like you need more of a killer instinct than that.
yeah,
But hard to argue with. But I'm a Jordan guy too.
yeah.
I'm a Jordan guy too. We did the rule change one. I like that. If you could travel back in time, what period would you visit?
From a basketball perspective, or
Anytime, life,
anytime.
anything. Where would you go? And remember, you're visiting. You don't have to live there.
Yeah, you know, um, I think, and some of my answer here, Matt's going to be influenced by my own personal life. Like like a lot of Canadians, like all four of my grandparents were immigrants to
Hmm.
Canada, and so I think to just go back to understanding how much courage that takes to just pack up your life and then move to another country. Like some of my players that I coach are immigrants, and I think it's just like the amount of faith that you have to have, and like not
Wow.
only faith in a higher being, but faith that this is like I'm doing this for my family. Like when their parents move, you know, and to just start over in a new country where everything is new. I have so much respect for people who come to Canada, come to the United States to start over for a new life. Like
Well said, man. I mean, my wife and I, we moved 15 miles 5 years ago from Keller to Hearst. It was scary. Like we
yes,
thought, is this the right choice? Like, should we
yeah,
just stay put or that's 15 miles within the same metroplex. You're
yeah,
talking across. Yeah, that's a good one.
yeah.
Two more. How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
Zero. I do not. I just it's not a religious or moral thing. I just don't enjoy the taste of it, so
That's
I
fair.
don't drink
That's
coffee.
fair. We've been pretty much aligned through everything in our talk until that moment.
Okay, so
You
you
just,
like your coffees?
it's one of those, it's like I do it because the head coach I used to work for told me that head coaches do that.
Yeah. Hey, I enjoy like at lunch. I enjoy having a soda
Yeah.
that's got caffeine in it. It's
Okay.
not
So,
like I'm
okay.
anti-caffeine.
We're good
It's just
there. We're good there.
yeah.
Last one. Godfather, Star Wars, or neither.
Star Wars,
All
big
right,
time.
coach. We're back. We're
Yeah,
back.
I remember just being mesmerized
Yeah.
by that Star Wars series, and like I often explain to my players, like I said, like one of the things you guys don't understand is that like that original Star Wars it was in the theaters for over a year, because back then there was only like one show in a theater, and it would like there weren't all these like multiplexes,
Yeah.
and there wasn't streaming, and it was like so like it was like when a big movie like that came out, it stayed out forever. And now like a movie comes out and is gone in 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah. They can't wait to get it up online. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Do you enjoy, so obviously you're talking about 4, 5, and 6. Do you enjoy
yeah,
the rest of the canon
I
as
did
well?
absolutely. I've watched like I haven't really conscientiously watched the what I'll call the sort of like the side stories, but like
Yes.
the main stories, I've watched them all absolutely.
One thing I did with my son, probably a year or so ago, was we went from, in chronological order, from one all the way through, including the side like Solo and
Yeah,
Rogue One and all
yeah,
those. Really cool to see the flow behind it, and we got to get past some of like the 4, 5, and 6. The story, the script
oh,
was just so great. Like the acting, what they're doing. 1, 2, and 3, you lost some of that because of the
correct.
special effects they were trying to do. I liked Hayden Christensen as a young Darth. I thought he did a
Yes,
great job,
I
but
did too.
there's people split on that. But
I know. But you know what's interesting? You did like that actually has given me some food for thought. I would enjoy doing that. The one I did at the beginning of COVID, because my wife and I don't have kids, so
hmm,
I missed out completely on the Harry Potter thing. I decided to I read the book, watched the movie, read the book,
no
watched the movie.
way.
At the beginning of COVID, like just had time to fill, and I really now I understand why Harry Potter was such a big thing, because
Yeah,
those books were unbelievable. And I just it was such a cool concept to just follow this group of kids. They basically three main characters from seventh grade through the end of high school. Like
yeah,
it was just
that's
like
neat.
what a cool sort of way to drive the plot, right? Like each book is just that grade of school. Like
Yep, yep. Coach, this was so much fun, man.
I loved it.
Like, I instantly I enjoyed meeting you, and I could, like all the PGC guys. There just seems to be an energy about all of you that is just something special, and I felt that, and then I was so happy when we were able to connect and get you on. And I do feel like, well, I do need to get Rudy and Dustin on. I was able to direct with them when they were really young, and
Yeah,
even when I was directing and they were the assistant, I felt like, man, they're better at this, or they're teaching me so much. Like,
yeah. Well,
so
and you
I,
can imagine how their acceleration. They're both now working full time with us at PGC, um, and just excelling in their roles. But yeah, the depth of knowledge that
mm,
those guys have accumulated for
yeah,
young
and
men.
the
It's
reps. I mean, it's
yes,
amazing the amount of reps. Like I was way better my third summer than I was my first summer,
yeah.
just because the reps that you have going on. I can't imagine. But just going back to you though, man, really appreciate you. Thankful for what you're continuing to do with PGC, because it's still near and dear to my heart. And just really appreciate you, man.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Matt, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to connect with you on this. Like basketball has it just opened up so many opportunities in my life. Like this upcoming weekend, I'm heading up to one of our territories called Nunavut, which is way, way north. Like it's almost close to Greenland. They've asked me to come up and do a 3-day coaching clinic up there with where I'm the only presenter. So it's not like where I'm doing the whole thing, but they're wanting to create a basketball infrastructure because it's almost exclusively indigenous. They obviously compete in hockey, but they're wanting to develop a basketball framework. So I'm going up there to do a 3-day clinic. And without basketball, I would never be going up to
Yep.
to Nunavut.
To none of it.
Yeah, that's what it's called. It's called Nunavut, and
There's a
they would be
comedian.
having none of it. Like
There's a comedian that, and I'm blanking on his name. Blonde hair, like real, almost. He kind of makes fun of how pale he is. He was doing a show in Canada, and he was talking about all the territories and their
yeah,
names, and he
yes,
went through this whole thing about none of it. So when you said that, I was like, I've heard of that before.
yeah. Well, that's amazing. Kudos to you for being so well read. But my point was, basketball has opened
Yeah,
up some incredible opportunities for me.
yeah,
but it's also like the people I get to meet. And when I met you down at that session in Texas, I could immediately tell that you and I share, like, if you and I were like coaching, in the same district, we'd probably go like this during games. But then as soon as the game's over, we
texting each other after. That was awesome. That was
awesome. And we would develop a great friendship because I know that your values are solid. You love working with young people just like I do. That shows through in everything you do. And the young men that are entrusted to you they're very, very fortunate.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi Podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.